For me, it was cheaper rent. It was accessibility from everywhere. So I felt like it was an extension of Miami Beach. It's just a short trip over the causeway. Plus, there was neighborhoods north of there, south of there, so easily accessible. Rents were cheaper, and there was a little, 3 square block radius that Craig had started to think about cleaning up, right? Craig Robbins. And but I remember going there, and I remember I took who just is now my business partner, who's my best friend. And I was so excited because we got our sign. And I was like, come on, I want to go see it at night. And so we drove up. We weren't open yet. The sign was probably up like 6 months before we opened. But we went to see the sign, and he had never even been there.
Wow.
And he's like, are you fucking crazy? Like, there was nobody there at night.
Have you decided what you're going to get?
Oh, yeah, definitely we're going to get one of each.
One of each. Got it.
Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of One of Each. As you know already, this is a space where I invite friends, chefs, people from the food industry, or people who just enjoy a great meal with friends to talk about what's special about sitting around the table, enjoying great food with friends, with family. And today is a very special day because I have here Michael Schwartz, who, to say the least, is a legend in the culinary scene, not only in Miami, but I would say nationwide. And thanks, Michael, for accepting the invitation. Welcome.
It's my pleasure. I thought you were going to say it's a special day because it's the day after National Caviar Day.
Oh, that's true. I mean,
and everyone has a caviar hangover.
if you knew that, we could have.
I should have. It's my bad.
Next time. So it's okay. I got the date now, so we'll do it next year.
Yeah,
we do
you better mark it on your calendar. You can't keep up with all the national food dates.
Funny. We add glutonomy at some point. Just to get like traffic on social media and content, we would do like those Instagram posts like happy chocolate cookie day, happy ramen day, and at some point I'm like, guys, we gotta stop.
It's every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, and then there's multiples. Anyway, I don't know who creates those calendars, but it's
cookie brands, caviar brands.
Exactly. Yeah. But we had a good time with caviar. But it's a pleasure to be here, man.
No, thank you for coming. And again, of course. And I was talking to you. I'm not a journalist or anything, so I hope this is just like a smooth conversation. Amazing. But there's so many things I want to ask you anyway, because of what you mean for the food scene, all the experience that you have with different restaurants. I know you have so many stories to tell about what has been going on in Miami for the last, 20-something years.
Well, I moved here coming on 31 years ago.
And you're from Philly.
I'm from Philly. I moved to Miami from New York City.
And what brought you here?
The weather.
It's not the summer weather.
I didn't know any better. Like all the other people that just moved to Miami, you come here in February, you're like, I got to be in Miami. Yeah. And then in August, you sweat your balls off. Yeah. So, no, I think it was, it was the excitement of, so I moved here in the early 90s when Miami was just, South Beach particularly, was just starting to explode. And I saw an opportunity for, to create food that wasn't flashy and trendy and about a club.
Okay.
And so I was single. There was a lot of beautiful women. The weather seemed great. The opportunity seemed great. And so here I am.
And you stayed?
Stayed and, started businesses, started a family, made tons of friends and I love Miami.
Nice. But so when you came, you were already in the food industry. You were already cooking?
Yeah,
that was a way to find?
No, I've been cooking my whole life.
Okay.
And so by my whole life, I mean, I grew up in the convenience era.
Okay.
So it's not like I grew up in a family that understood gastronomy, right? It was, and so when I say the convenience era, so I was born in '64. I grew up in the '70s, and it was like when the microwave was new, and we had trash compactors and frozen dinners, and that's what I grew up eating.
Okay.
Was we didn't know anything about, and no knock on my parents. They did the best they could. We were eating Swanson TV dinners, and maybe she would cook a meal every once in a while. So when I was 15, I got a job. My dad's like, you got to go get a job. and he put black pants and a white button-down shirt on and took me to restaurants. And I don't know why he picked restaurants.
Okay.
And I got a job in a really good, fancy Northern Italian restaurant that
Front
was...
of the house or kitchen?
So, as a busboy.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything. And... but it was a real eye-opener, and it was a very progressive for that time. In the late 70s, they were using ingredients like radicchio and Belgian endive and making Parmigiano gelato, and it was very cutting edge. And so I migrated into the kitchen pretty quickly after I got that job as a busboy. And that was it. So I've been cooking for, the vast majority of my life. So when I moved here, I was already a chef, had a pretty good resume at that time. But, I met who was then my business partner in New York, and we moved here together and opened a bunch of restaurants.
Nice. So you were 15, and again, you had no experience. So when you were there as a busboy and looking into the kitchen, like what caught your attention? Was like the vibe, the uniform?
Yes, all of it. It was magic for me. I was a kid and I didn't spend a lot of time in restaurants. We didn't go out to eat a lot, but it was the excitement, right? It was a grown-up world, first of all. I was a kid. But it was this excitement and the sounds and the pace and the people. And it was exciting for me. And I was just instantly... And so now I had a friend that was a cook in that restaurant that convinced me that it was much cooler to be in the kitchen than in the front of the house. And frankly, I wasn't like a big people person. And so, a lot of us chefs are just really pretty much introverts.
Okay.
And that's why we wind up in the back, because we don't really need to talk to people.
Yeah.
And so, it was just, I was drawn to it. I was excited about it. And fortunately, I started in a restaurant that had a real point of view that was interesting under a woman chef too,
which was probably unheard of at the time,
and still problematically is a problem. But she was a woman chef that was sort of a disciple of Alice Waters, and preached that message, right? The quality ingredients, and eating locally, and so it was amazing. I wound up working for that company for about 5 years.
Wow. And did any of that experience transcend to your house? Like, would you be like on a weekend, like, hey, mom, dad, or I'm gonna cook you a meal?
They were the happy recipients, and I would cook. It was funny because I would cook and I didn't really know anything. And I remember going once to my aunt's house and cooking dinner for her friends, and I think I made this like pureed butternut squash soup, and I must have used like a half a gallon of heavy cream, right? And she's like, what are you doing? But I used to cook for anybody that would eat. And, my parents or my friends. And I got the bug.
Nice. And of course, that was 70s, early 80s. Yeah. It was, I don't want to, and you know this better than me, but the evolution of cuisine in the U.S., like that first generation of American chefs. How was it? Because today everybody wants to be a chef. It's easy to have like role models out there, but at the time, no kid wanted to go to culinary school, or who were the role models?
Yeah, not many. It's funny looking back, and I sound like an old fart, but back in the days, you couldn't surf the internet. You couldn't, so everything is so accessible now. I mean, if you wanted to read a cookbook, you had to go to the library or some of the publications at a newsstand, magazines, and we would read those magazines, Gourmet Magazine and Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. Those were the three, and even Savoir back then. But, it was the access to information was not there, and there were no celebrity chefs. I mean, the Galloping Gourmet, do you know who that is?
Yeah, I remember
the Galloping Gourmet.
Or early Food Network.
Yeah, well, it was way before Food Network. There were none of that, and so you wanted to be a chef because you had an experience or you had a passion, or maybe you read a book or you took a trip and something jumped out at you or touched you in a way that made you want to be in that business, right? But there was no celebrities at that time. And, I just remember it was old school, because it was old. It was long ago, but people went to culinary school and went through the ranks and then worked their way up. And that was how you did it. It wasn't like, you go to culinary school and come out a chef.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, the times have changed a lot. And I think, there's ebbs and flows. I think leading up before COVID, there was a great deal of excitement to be in this business. I think COVID, a lot of people left our industry because it's just hard for a lot of reasons. And, it'll ebb and flow some more, but I got into it and there were no role models for me. My role models were the people that embraced me in that restaurant as a kid that didn't know anything.
Okay, interesting. But then you didn't stop. You didn't get a break to go to culinary school. You went straight.
From there's a story. So I hated school.
Okay.
And I would do anything to not go to school. And when I found this job, it was a reason not to go to school. And so I applied for this work roster program where I would be able to leave school at 11:30 and go to work. And I was like, that's great. And I loved going to work. So I never liked school. I was on the work roster. But my mom and dad really wanted me to go to college, right? So a friend of mine said, well, you should apply for this chef's externship program at Bucks County Community College, right? And I was like, great. Sounds great. I'll do it. I don't know. Great. So I went and took a test and did like a spice test and applied, and I got put on a waiting list. And I was like, all right, I think I didn't get accepted to Bucks County Community College's chef's apprenticeship program. And I wound up taking couple business courses because I thought that's what I should do, right? And I dropped out. So the extent of my college education was this part-time half a semester of community college waiting to get accepted to the chef's apprenticeship program, which never happened. So no formal training for me.
Interesting. And now today, fast forward some years, we'll not say how many, when you are hiring people, do you take into consideration, is being to culinary school, is it a plus, or you'd rather have the hands-on experience?
Yeah. It's totally subjective for me. Having a culinary degree is not make or break for me. But conversely, some people with culinary degrees are too cocky, right? So for me, it's like if you're honest and you're passionate and you're articulate, I don't care how much experience you have. And especially now, we can't be that picky now. You find somebody that can walk and chew gum at the same time, you're like, you're hired. And then if they show up, you're thrilled. Yeah. But no, I think having that culinary education is not that important to me. I think enthusiasm and work ethic and honesty, those are things that we look for in employees. And we could train them. It's not rocket science. Yeah. And especially what we do. I mean, we like to keep it simple. We're not cooking with new world techniques, and there's no, chemicals and circulators. And I don't have a problem with those things, but my point is that we could teach somebody how to put food together, right? We can't teach them how to appreciate a job or be passionate or communicate.
Interesting. Yeah. So when you were in Miami, you mentioned that you came with your partner. So you already opened your own restaurant. You started working for somebody else.
So I started working for what then became my partner in New York. He had a nightclub restaurant in Manhattan, and he had a place out in Southampton. Okay. And I spent a little bit of time working for him. We established a really good relationship, and then we decided we wanted to open a restaurant. And we started looking around Manhattan for a long time, looked at lots of spaces. And then for whatever reason, and I can't really even remember, but we started talking and thinking about coming to Miami. And we did. And we found a space, and we moved here, and we opened Nemo restaurant in 1995. And in
Miami Beach.
Yep, First and Collins. Nemo then became, so so we opened many restaurants together. My business partner at that time was named Miles Sheffitz, who owns Prime 112 and Big Pink, and so we opened a bunch of restaurants together. Then we split up, and then he went on to open Prime 112, and then I went and stumbled along for a few years, and then finally opened Michael's Genuine. So, yeah, the idea was for us to come here and open something that we thought would resonate with people, that was different than what was going on. And really, if I'm honest, like the scene then and the scene now is not that much different.
Okay.
Right? Like there's a...
You're talking specifically about Miami Beach.
Miami in general.
Okay.
There is a big market for clubstrons. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. And we're saturated right now with big, flashy, expensive build-out clubstrons. But we were then too. And that's what the whole scene was about back then. And I think the difference now is that there's good people and chefs and operators doing honest work, and it's not about the flash and the glitz and the sparklers and the table service. But back then it was mostly that.
I mean, when people ask me, I mean, I moved to Miami 2015. So, and when people ask me how has evolved, like, I personally, I don't go to those places. I don't think they're for me, but they're there. Some of them are successful on their own way, and that's never gonna disappear. I mean, that's the Miami. Some people or many people come here, and look for. But now at least we have an alternative, no?
Yeah.
Before it was all that, and if you were not there, you are screwed. Now
pretty much.
Yeah. Now there's options, and especially this side of the city, no?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I opened Michael's Genuine, so we just celebrated 17 years, and when I opened Michael's Genuine, on the other side of the causeway, people are like, what are you doing? But it was right when things started to migrate off of South Beach. South Beach started to change, and opportunity moved west into Miami proper.
But you were, I mean, either a visionary or lucky, but you're in the heart of the design district. But back in 2007... There was nothing there. People were like, what were you thinking? Or
everyone would say that.
And what drove you there? Like cheaper rent?
Yeah. For me, it was cheaper rent. It was accessibility from everywhere. So I felt like it was an extension of Miami Beach. It's just a short trip over the causeway. Plus, there was neighborhoods north of there, south of there, so easily accessible. Rents were cheaper, and there was a little, 3 square block radius that Craig had started to think about cleaning up, right? Craig Robbins. And but I remember going there, and I remember I took who is now my business partner, who's my best friend. And I was so excited because we got our sign. And I was like, come on, I want to go see it at night. And so we drove up. We weren't open yet. The sign was probably up like 6 months before we opened. But we went to see the sign, and he had never even been there.
Wow.
And he's like, are you fucking crazy? Like, there was nobody there at night. And so I had no idea what was going to become of that neighborhood, but I did know that the things that I said. The rent was affordable, that 3 square block radius was clean, and people would come, I thought, and they did.
They came.
Yeah.
And what do you, what was your approach? I don't know, how many restaurants had you opened before Michael's, and what was your approach? Because... there are some dishes that, again, I started going to Michael's maybe before moving here, but let's say 10 years. And, there's some dishes that I hope you never take out of the menu, like the pork belly with kimchi and the pig ears and everything. But what was your approach? What was going on in Miami at the time for you to decide what to offer?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me... when I split my partnership with my ex-partner, we had opened Nemo and Big Pink and another Big Pink and a sushi bar. And then when we split up, there was a period of time when I took some stupid jobs and was trying to find my way. And then I signed the lease at Michael's Genuine and we opened. But so for me, it was like a last chance. Like if that didn't work, I was gonna leave town, and I didn't know where I was gonna go. I already, I already had young kids and we had a family, but I felt it was like a last ditch effort. And so what was going on was, sort of what's still going on. This, these big flashy restaurants, and then this movement of chefs that were open in smaller restaurants. And for me, I wanted to make a place that was, I hate to sound like genuine, where it wasn't about the flash or the design. It was a comfortable place. It was anchored by an open kitchen and a bar, and it just a place where people could come every day and feel good. And I guess it's the American interpretation of a brasserie or bistro, right? And that's what I wanted. I wanted to cook what I wanted to cook. I felt like what I wanted to cook is what people wanted to eat, even though that sounds like sort of, I don't know, a little weird. Okay. But I was convinced that if I just do what I want to do, that it would resonate. And I got lucky. And the timing was right. And
was there like an ecosystem to support what you wanted to do in terms of like producers, farmers, even like work staff?
Yes and no. I mean, the farmer thing, I'd always done that. And so when I opened Nemo, I was really trying to forge away with farmers and relationships and leveraging local product. So that had already been something that I established myself with before I opened Michael's Genuine. So it was sort of a platform that I could stand on because people already knew that that's what I was passionate about. But it wasn't easy, and it's still not easy, because I always say that chefs are lazy. And what I mean by that is, chef will work 80 hours a week. So what do you mean they're lazy? Well, they're set in their ways. So, when you have to sort of break the mold or change directions or pivot based on product availability, it upsets the rhythm, right? And so if you can't just place your order and expect it to be there the next day, it's more work. And that's what I focused on. We leveraged farmer relationships, bought crops, whatever they produced. It wasn't like, hey, what do you want us to grow for you? Okay. It was always like, no, what do you grow? What do you do best? And I'll buy it all. And we would change the menu and pepper the menu with 4 or 5 different dishes with the same ingredient because it was readily available. And that's what we focused on. And so those relationships with farmers and fishermen, and that has gotten a lot better since I opened Michael's Genuine. There are more farmers. There are more people interested in taking that different direction about how they order their food. And so, I think that, I like to think that I had something to do with influencing that in Miami. Although if I didn't do it, somebody else would have done it.
Yeah, but you mentioned something interesting about influencing what was going on in Miami. At some point, or at what point did you feel like you were doing something different? Like, were you attracting talent? Because if we see now, like, there's a whole generation of chefs who cite you as either as an inspiration or they went through some of your kitchens.
Yeah.
Was there like a tipping point where you thought, okay, I'm building a legacy here. I'm having all these.
I never really thought about it that way. Really, for me, it was just an extension of doing what I wanted to do. And if people liked it and bought into it, they would come and join. And if they didn't, they wouldn't. And if they did and they joined, and then they could move on and be better and do better things. And so I never, there was no strategy behind it. But I was appreciative that people recognized that it was a good place to work for whatever reason. If we were pushing the boundaries with, sourcing, for instance, or the fact that we pretty drastically changed the menu on a daily basis. And that was challenging and probably stupid, in terms of food cost and consistency, because, there's no seasonal menu changes where we could work on new dishes for 3 or 4 weeks, train people on them, and launch it. That whole thing happens in 12 hours. Yeah. So I would say, a lot of people pass through those kitchens, and a lot of them are still here doing great things. So that always makes me happy.
And you don't need to name names or anything, but is there any particular chef or restaurant group or like you feel like represented by what they're doing or that reflects your philosophy?
I'll just Mike Beltran comes
Yeah.
to mind because we just spent some time together the other day, and he didn't work for me that long, probably 3 years, I would say. And then he moved on and started opening restaurants and has had a profound impact on the Miami dining scene. So, I'll take some small portion of credit for his success, but
Nice.
It makes me proud to see that. There's a lot of people,
Yeah.
and you know who some of them are, and some of them are sort of under the radar. But no, I think I remember when I left my first job. The restaurant was called DeLulo's, and there were two of them. The original one, then they opened another one, and I went and helped open. And there was a guy who was the maitre d' that ran those restaurants, and his name was Toto. Little Italian guy, like 5'4". Great guy, though. He was like a role model for me, and he was like a father figure in a lot of ways. And I remember I decided I was going to leave Philadelphia and move to California. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a job. I had a friend in California. I had a car, my Jeep, which I still own. The
Nice.
85 Jeep CJ7 that I bought new in 1984. And I was like, I'm going to move and just expand my horizons. And he freaking lost his shit. And I was so angry, like I was going next door to the competition or something. And so that really resonated with me because I always, like, you invest in people and it's hard. And then those people hopefully take your investment and go do better things. And I always wish people well when they do that. And especially if they do it the right way. There's a right way and a wrong way.
Absolutely.
So, but that sticks out in my mind because I always want the people that have worked under me to go do great things. Makes me look better, but it makes me proud too.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
And because I think we've been working, and you probably were one of the first ones to start that path, that Miami is changing in terms of the perception that the rest of the country, or the rest of the world for that matter, has about Miami as a fun town with club restaurants and everything. And now they're understanding there's like an actual like food scene, everything. You had your James Beard in 2010.
It's like a lifetime ago.
And I think nobody got it until Val
right.
Chang this year. So for those 14 years, I always felt like, hey, guys, we are here. Like, it's not like they wouldn't take us seriously, but there's an amazing generation here of chefs doing amazing things, but it's hard to change that paradigm.
Well, that perception is in a lot of ways a reality, right? That this perception that Miami's all about glitz and glamour and flash and, and breaking that cycle is hard. But in a lot of ways, it still is very much endears this idea of clubstrons, right? But in the meantime, there was a lot of people doing great work that never got recognized, and probably because of that stigma. And I don't know if it's changing or, one step forward or two steps back or two steps forward or one step back, but there's still a stigma about Miami.
There is. I still, as a diner, I mean, as I mentioned, I moved to Miami 2015, and the change is amazing for the good. The number of great restaurants, great chefs, but still, like, people who are not familiar with the food scene here, they still think it's that
sexy
Miami,
fish.
Yeah, exactly. And
sexy fish.
So I remember once, and I've been always a critic of Miami's food scene. I think I mentioned this. I had Ryan King, who you met in Lengua. One of the things that changed my perception of Miami, it was literally that tipping point. He was coming to Miami and he was writing an article about how Miami's food scene is evolving and everything. And he's like, okay, I'm there for 3 days. Let's make an itinerary of where I'm going. I'm like, I'm gonna take him. Like it's gonna be so hard. And as I started doing the list, I'm like, no, it's like a full list. I'm proud of the places. I'm showing him, and that's one like that tipping point. Like, okay, it's changing.
So all of a sudden, you were tasked with making a list, and then you realized, wow, my list is pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. There is plenty of places now. Yeah, but still, if you don't live here, then you read about the flashy ones.
Yeah, and in terms of identity, and this is another topic that I always bring up with chefs. Do you believe, or do you think there's like a South Florida cuisine, like in terms of products, in terms of all the influences that we have, of course, strong Latin influence? Would you say today that there is a South Florida cuisine?
I'm shaking my head, yeah, and I'm going to say no. And it's a shame because, so there's some people that embrace the local products, right? And I don't mean heirloom tomatoes, right? I mean like sapodilla or mamey or soursop or whatever it is, right? There's some chefs that are playing with those ingredients, but like me, when I moved here from New York, I shied away from that stuff because I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to feature it. And probably I didn't understand the cultural diversity that makes Miami so great. And I think, so it's easier to understand now, maybe because of social media or the internet or whatever. But to really embrace it, like I can't think of an example of somebody that mashes all that stuff together. Beltran uses a lot of that stuff. He's got a big mamey tattoo on him.
Yeah.
But there's not a ton of people that can weave that stuff intelligently into their cuisine. I just don't see it. Do you?
No, but I was going to mention, and I think I also mentioned this in the show before, in Jeremiah Tower's biography, he talks about in the 70s, he did like a series of menus in Japanese.
Yeah.
About regional cuisines in the U.S. Like he started doing menus like French, Belgium, Spanish, and then he started doing like regional menus. I'm going to look for that page because he made at some point like a South Florida menu, but it was in California, what he thought was or could be Floridian cuisine at the time.
Right.
And he made in the 70s a menu inspired by South
I want to see it.
I'll check it out and I'll send it to you.
But there's some people that forged the way there, right? The Mango Gang back in the 80s, right? In the 90s, and Alan Susser and Norman Van Aken and Mark Militello, Robin Haas, those guys, they put South Florida on the map in a cuisine that I think would not stand the test of time now, right? It would be a little like cheesy.
Yeah.
But I enjoy working with the local product and still I would say don't fully have a grasp on how to work with it in a way that people would appreciate.
Okay.
Right? Without then being tagged as Floridian.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting. There's an opportunity there, and somebody should do it.
Absolutely.
Especially on for me, like on the Haitian side, I can't think of one sort of even remotely elevated place that's featuring the intricate flavors of Haiti.
Absolutely.
Not one.
Yeah. Not even, I talk about Venezuelan diaspora, like how many Venezuelans we got here. And yeah, there's many like areperas and you see tequeños here and there. Carlos Garcia tried to do something with obra, but it wasn't even Venezuelan. It was like Venezuelan influence with Spanish. But you see those cuisines like Colombian, Cuban, Venezuelan, there aren't like those expressions they stay like in the casual fast foodie.
It's true too.
Yeah.
It's funny because at Amara we do this series called Amara and Friends, and whenever so the idea is that for 5 months, each month we pick a chef that represents the country where they're from, and we collaborate and we do every other course. And it's been great fun for me, but my point is that even for me, like you'll hate this, right? Like I did not know enough. I was ignorant to the point where I just lumped all those countries together, right? It's Latin America. But it is so complete. Each country is completely different and has a different point of view and a different way that they highlight and showcase their culture. And so it was a great learning experience for me. But I just thought it was interesting because I was like, yeah, it's Latin food. I mean, whatever that means.
Yeah, but it's great that you did it because at the end it's a space where each chef or each country can be represented in a menu, and if you go to those 5 dinners in those 5 months, you can have like an understanding of the different cultures.
Which is selfishly for me why I even do the series. Yeah. So this is the 2nd year of the series, and it's funny because someone like Beltran, who's Cuban, right, and he represented Cuba as a country, he didn't cook Cuban food. He cooked food that was informed and influenced by his Cuban heritage, but it was his interpretation. Other chefs cook very traditional. So it's interesting to see how chefs, how they express their country of origin, right?
Interesting.
And it's been interesting for me.
And I think with the exception of Peru, for obvious reasons, what like Gaston has done in a global space and everything, and we have amazing Peruvian restaurants here. Diego Oca was here in the show.
He came and did the Amara and Friends, and his approach was awesome. I knew what it was going to be. And so it's a challenge for us because we have to create dishes that complement their dishes in the spirit of their country. And I'm not Peruvian or Colombian or from Venezuela. I'm none of those. I'm a gringo from Philly. So it's been a great learning experience.
Is there any, and don't feel pressure because I'm Venezuelan. Is there anything or any country that has inspired you or where you found something that you connected with, like a dish or an
from the people that participated in the program so far? Well, Diego for sure, because I've never been to Peru. And so
you need to go.
I know. So that's the one that jumps out at me first because I think the fusion of the Asian and Peruvian cuisine is super interesting for me, and the flavors and the ingredients. So that one stuck out. Yeah, it's on my list.
And Diego is super talented.
Super cool,
great guy. All right, that's that's fantastic. What Diego is doing is amazing, and there's I think one of the nice things of Miami, it's like the unofficial capital of South America.
Right.
So you get here amazing talent, and also I listened to this many times from like French chefs from Colombia, from Venezuela, Argentina. Like at some point, they all want to open in Miami.
Yeah.
Which is,
and they all did.
Yeah, exactly.
And they could all go home. No, just kidding.
No. Speaking of, first of all, like Michael's Genuine, it's been how many years now?
17 and a half.
17 years. Not an easy task here in Miami. And you have, of course, the pizzerias, you have Amara.
Yeah.
But there's one place that I remember and I loved and I'm super sad it closed, which is the Cypress Room.
Yeah.
Was it like a different Miami? I mean, the restaurant was amazing. I know the size was challenging because you couldn't do as many covers probably as you wanted, but the food was amazing. The space was amazing. What happened? What happened there?
I have a lot to say on this subject. Well, thank you, first of all. I never heard so much outpouring for appreciation of Cypress Room until I closed it.
Wow.
And then I was like, well, where the fuck were you guys? So about the space, it was small. It was a 40-seater, I think.
Which today many people think it's the ideal size for a restaurant.
Perfect. And I was like, well, if I can't turn 40 seats one time, then I deserve to fail, and I failed. But I think that in terms of like the physical space, the only thing I would do different if I did it again, which I won't, but people ask me all the time. And it seems like lately more than ever, I'm hearing a lot of buzz about
Why don't you do like a
Cypress Room.
pop-up, like a Cypress Room?
Yeah, because it's complicated. Because I think what made Cypress Room special was the environment, right? And it was, and I always say this as a chef, like the food's not the most important thing, right? It's the combination of all the things that make the sum greater, right? So the environment, the ambiance, the entry, the hospitality, this what you hear, what you see, what you eat.
Yeah.
And so to recreate that as a pop-up would be a tremendous amount of work, right? Because it had an aesthetic that was really special. But the only thing I would change is that the bar, there wasn't enough room at the bar for people to stand behind people that were sitting. And if the bar, as I always say, like if the bar was a little bit bigger, we would have been fine. But, you know, we struggled. I mean, we came out, and it was really a passion project for me. And it was a weird time in my life. I was going through a separation, but I put everything into that place. And I designed it, and I was really proud of it. And people just, it didn't resonate. And by the way, every restaurant that I've opened after Michael's Genuine has always been compared to Michael's Genuine. Exactly.
That's not fair.
Right. Well, I'm like, this is not Michael's Genuine.
Yeah.
Well, you should put this on the menu, and you should do that. But we didn't. We wanted to make a place that was special. We had tablecloths. We had people ironing the tablecloths at every turn. We had flowers on the table. We wanted to provide a sophisticated level of service in an environment that was special. And that's what we created, and it didn't resonate. And we wound up pivoting and turning Cypress Room into Cypress Tavern, taking the tablecloths off, trying to make it a little bit more approachable. But I would turn the question back to you. Like, why? What do you think?
I mean,
And would it resonate now?
I was gonna ask you that. My answer is yes. I mean, I'm not the and I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but I know I'm not the average Miamian diner. I mean, I appreciate Cypress, Michael's, and the
we need more
Tam-Tams.
people. We need more people like you. But besides that,
I mean, for me, it was amazing. The size was perfect because it was, again, it was everything that I.
It was the opposite of everything you hate about the Miami splashy restaurants.
Thanks. That's why
I got you.
Yeah. So
and that was intentional.
Exactly. And I believe same location, same size. I think it would do great today because you see the restaurants that people are loving are those smaller restaurants.
Yeah.
And they might not do 20 million a year or whatever, but those are the places that people enjoy, that locals enjoy, that are that suffer less the seasonality of Miami.
Well, that's a thing too. You know, seasonality is real.
Yeah.
And I think that post-COVID, everyone forgot about seasonality, particularly the year 2022 was when Miami was wide open, the world was closed, and everyone was here, and no one left. And everyone was like, this is great. But you can fast forward to now where it's quiet and people are realizing that the seasonality is a real thing. You better hunker down in the summer, cut labor, put away money in season. And so,
people forgot in 2-3 years, people forgot about seasonality. And you and I, we know a lot of like friends who are in the food industry, chefs, restaurant owners, everything. A lot of people are complaining, and the first thing that I asked them, because of course it's worse than 23, it's way worse than 22. Is it worse than 2018 or 2019?
That's the interesting question, and that's how we benchmark now, because forecasting now is a bitch. Trying to write a budget. And so then we started to look back at 2018 and 19 as a benchmark, and it's better.
Comparison.
And it's better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's better than it was then.
Absolutely.
And so, but it certainly doesn't make it easier, right? Like I said, like forecasting has been a moving target, and this year was really strange. Like January was dead.
Wow.
And so it really set the tone for a weird season. February, March rebounded, but then the slow skid started way early this year. So people are suffering. You're seeing restaurants closing, and if they're not closing, they're scrambling around, not paying vendors and figuring out how they're going to make it till
what
November.
I hope is like maybe 24 is the hangover of 21, 22, 23, and then we'll get back to
normal.
To 25 being normal, like seasonality and slow summer. And
I think so. I'm optimistic that the season's going to be good, and but there's just too many restaurants.
I agree.
And
I don't see that many people.
Yeah.
Same with, I mean, I don't know anything about residential, but I see all those condos being built, and where's the people?
It's not that different than how it used to be, really. People open restaurants, they think that it's glamorous here. Like I've seen these ebbs and flows of mass people coming to Miami from New York or other places and open restaurants and then going away.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this past wave was the biggest one post-COVID. So many people, but it'll correct itself.
Yeah.
And so the good restaurants will stay and some will close, and hopefully more people move and they figure out traffic patterns and stuff. But it's like it's crazy out there.
And is there any place that excites you lately here in Miami, that any go-to place?
Let's come back to that.
All right, perfect. I asked, Alejandro from Miami Slice. I asked him the other day in the interview. I like, dude, the last 2 years I opened 2 restaurants and I have a baby, so I don't go out.
I don't go out. I don't go out that much either. I mean, I'd much rather cook at home, but we go out. I'll give you a short list.
All right.
Later.
Okay, perfect. What about outside Miami? Do you go often to Philly, New York?
So I love Philly. I go back at least once a year. I don't have family there anymore, but we go every year in June to support the Great Chefs event with Mark Vetri, who's a dear friend, and for raise money for childhood cancer. Nice. Alex's Lemonade, and so I love the Philly food scene. I go to New York often. My daughter lives there, so I'm there 3 or 4 or 5 times a year.
And you go to restaurants?
I get stuck in going to the same restaurants, and like one of my chefs right now just texted me from Estella, which I love. Four Horsemen's one of my all-time favorites. So good.
So good.
And so, I would say I'm not really that in tune with a lot of the new restaurants.
Okay.
Like you probably are. And I should get your list, because I wind up just sort of falling into the same patterns and seeing friends. And
yeah, but I have a dilemma, which is because, of course, as you travel and you go often to a city, you start collecting favorite restaurants, and your list keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Right.
And you're always in the dilemma, okay, do I want to, let's say we go to New York 3-4 times a year. Let's say that's 12 days, 24 meals.
Yeah.
Let's suppose you go to New York, 24, you have 24 meals.
How many of those do you want to take a chance on?
Exactly. So do you want to go to your 10 loved restaurants that it's going to be great, that you know the people, or you want to venture yourself into new ones? And that's a dilemma.
That's exactly right. And that's, I think, a dilemma that a lot of people that love food have, but my girlfriend will always be like, I don't want to go to any new places. I don't want to waste the potential for a bad meal by going to a place that's new until someone tells me, they got their shit together, we have to go.
Exactly. So what are your go-to places in New York?
Well, some of the ones I just mentioned, right? But I like I said, I get caught like going to see friends, right? Yeah. And so, I'll pop into Barbudo because Jonathan's a good friend of mine, and he'll just be sitting there. Every time I go, I know he's going to be there.
Nice.
And I might not even eat, but I'll just pop in, and my friend Joey Campanero, Little Al, and so places like that. But right. Like I said, Four Horsemen's one, and I'm having like a mental block on restaurant recs.
That's fine.
Both here in New York, but And then my other daughter lives in Chicago, which is another great town.
Food scene.
Yep.
Great food scene.
And so a lot of times when I go, so she's a baker.
Oh.
She works for a great bakery called Floriole.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just retail. They don't do wholesale. So they're not one of the bigger, but they're beautiful stuff. And, but she's vegetarian. So if we go out, I always just take her lead on where we're going to eat. But Chicago's got a great scene.
Great scene.
Yeah.
Great scene. I love their Kumiko, which is like a Japanese bar with great tapas. And one thing that surprised me about Chicago, for the size of the city and the food scene, I go there often for work, and sometimes my meetings are on a Monday or on a Tuesday. And there's not many options in Chicago that open on Monday or Tuesday.
They're all closed on Monday.
And you're like, come on, it's like probably top
they should
3
rotate or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, every place is closed, and some of them are closed on Tuesday.
Even like nice bakeries, like, okay, I want to go have a croissant on Tuesday. No, they open on Wednesday. I'm like, what's going on? So last time I went with Julia from Kumiko, she took us to Warlord.
How was it?
Yeah, it was great. Opened on a Monday.
No reservations,
late,
though,
no
right?
Reservations. And it's a typical restaurant that people would love it or hate it because it's dark, loud, but the food was great.
You liked it?
Yeah, I liked it.
I almost went on my last trip.
I mean, and again, it opens on Monday, so just for that, it's like
they won by default.
Exactly.
I want to get your Chicago list.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to get your lists.
Oh, I have like full lists of different cities. And talking about traveling, you mentioned you just turned 60, no?
60.
And you celebrated in London.
Amazing.
Oh, I love London. I mentioned to you, I spent summers there. My wife lived there for 12 years. So my way to convince her to move with me Miami is like, okay, we'll do in Miami, but we gotta spend summers in London, which I love.
You're not complaining about.
I'm not complaining
yeah,
at
good
all.
for her though.
Exactly.
Yeah, you must miss London.
Oh, it's I'm going there tomorrow for 2.5 months. And talking about lists, my list of London, this is the 4th year that we're spending the summer there. So you can imagine. If I told you 24 restaurants in New York for like those
those
days,
12 days.
Yeah, imagine how many restaurants I have for London.
Oh my God.
And it's like frequent enough or I spend enough days where I can kind of have like my regular places or
the routine.
But then the food scene is so dynamic that if I haven't been there in like 4 months. There's already like 10 new places that I want to try.
It's amazing.
It's
When did that happen?
I don't
Because
know,
it wasn't long ago where London was like bashed for just shitty food.
Yeah. I think.
But all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think. Well, we talked about St. John. I'm wearing the T-shirt for those of you who are watching on YouTube. I think he made people realize how good their food is.
Their food.
Yeah.
Their product.
And that spawned like a whole generation of chefs. Maybe too much because at some point also you feel like everybody is doing the same thing in London.
Yep.
But it's
for sure.
great.
But what they do that you have to appreciate is they appreciate the product.
Absolutely.
And recognize that they're working with some of the best product in the world.
Absolutely.
And just keep it simple. Right? Like you just don't screw it up.
Absolutely.
That's what St. John does for me. It's like their technique celebrates simplicity.
Absolutely.
Right? And you look at the plate and go, maybe put some garnish on there. But no, you don't need
Maybe
to.
like
anything,
parsley, a leaf
something.
of parsley,
It could be completely brown dish, but you know it's going to taste good.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were in St. John, Clove Club. Of course, a classic. Isaac McHale is great. And you mentioned you went to one of my favorite restaurants in the world, which is Brat.
Brat.
I think top 10, St. John and Brat probably are there.
You know, and for completely different reasons. So my take on Brat, I went for lunch, and I want to go back for dinner because I'd never been there. Yeah. And it made me want to be there. The environment made me want to be there. Right. But I would say the only dig that I have on Brat is, they're cooking with wood.
Yes.
And it's very subtle. almost too subtle. Like, stoke that fire a little bit. You know what I mean? That was my only thing. Like, I think we had the whole turbot, and it was delicious. But if you blindfolded me, I could not tell that was cooked over charcoal.
Okay, interesting.
Only dig. But that would be a
restaurant. Don't be shy about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd stoke it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But, look, you can tell those guys what to do. They're making world-class food in an environment that you want to be in.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's the good thing about London. Talking about what Miami needs or what we like about Miami is like those small restaurants run by an up-and-coming chef who probably ended up opening in a place where he or she could afford like a better rent.
Yeah.
Like of course, there's people wouldn't believe it, but in London there's many like club restaurants and flashy places and so on and everything, which we don't go to.
Right.
But there's so many like small like 40-seat restaurants with very like amazing food, short menus. You wouldn't believe
Short
it.
menus is another one. But the question that I always think about is like, why is it so much more prevalent and accepted in a place like that as opposed to Miami? Like, we're fighting an uphill battle, right? So what is the reason? That's a question. Yeah. Like, I don't have the answer. Like, could it be the history or it's the product, right? And the understanding of the product, because I think here, like, we're on a peninsula.
Yes.
Right? So you can only go one direction to really find, like, there's no cheese making going on in Florida.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
And so I always just wonder, like, what makes a place different? And look, we're in a new world, and Miami does not have that long of a history compared to a place like London.
Yeah, no, there's so many things that you mentioned. I feel that like I love like short trips and driving and everything. And in Miami, you just can drive.
There's
north.
one way.
Yeah.
Or south. You're going to the Keys or you're going up to, to Central and Northern Florida, which is like a whole different world.
Exactly. And then you have the weather. So, of course, and maybe it's an unfair comparison to compare Miami with London. But if you see London, first you have the seasons. You have so many different, like, cattle, cheeses.
Yep. Sheep.
Everything. I mean, there's a place that I love, and it's outside London. It's in Somerset, called Ossip. Marilyn Johnson is there. And actually, they're moving to a new restaurant, classic, big house, farm. And it's so rich, like all the things that you get there by the season. Like you go in summer and it's one restaurant, and in winter it's a different restaurant. I mean...
You hit on a bunch of them there, though. Old, seasonality. For me, seasonality plays a big part in what defines Miami and the culinary scene, because it doesn't really change that much. Like, it's just hot, and then it's hotter.
Yeah.
Right? And where I grew up in Philly or in New York or in London, where the weather's not great, but I'll take it. But there's seasonal changes that inform the menu, what you feel, how you want to eat, and of course, what's coming out of the ground or not coming out of the ground.
Absolutely.
Informs the cuisine. Here, it's different. I think here, we're supposed to embrace the Caribbean and Latin America and put it all in a melting pot and use some sapote and mamey and create a new cuisine, I guess. I don't, I think that getting back to that question about is there a cuisine that defines Miami? There should be, and there will be.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And it's gonna, whatever it is, it's gonna take into account all the communities, the diasporas that have been migrating to Miami. And as I mentioned, like for me, it's the unofficial capital of Latin America, and maybe that cuisine will represent that. Who knows?
Maybe somebody watching will be inspired to
I hope so.
Utilize more local products.
Yes. Just one more thing, and again, thanks for your time. But I have one last question.
Lay it on me.
I'm an economist, so I used to do a lot of numbers before going into like marketing and food and everything. And when you want to project numbers and trends, the more data you have, historic data, the better you can project. And you've been in the restaurant business since like late 90s in Miami.
45 years.
45 years. Only 45 years. Probably you know better. No, you know, because nobody knows the future, but you witness what has been going on in Miami for many years. You've seen the ups and downs. There's definitely a big up in the last years. Where do you see the Miami food scene in, let's say, 5 years, 10 years? Are we even in the right track to get there?
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, man, we could have a whole podcast about that because, like I said earlier, like forecasting is like, trying to throw a dart at a moving target. And we just now accept the fact that we're going to just reforecast every month.
Okay.
So I would say, and you're right, like data informs it. And so prior to COVID, we had, what was probably 13, 14 years of history at Michael's Genuine where we could map out a week and be almost spot on.
Okay.
But now that's changed since COVID because we had the boom and then we have a little downside. So the future in Miami is bright. Obviously, people are moving here. There's lots of development. Like I said, oversaturation. You could love that or hate it. It depends what perspective you look at it from. But I'm really hopeful. Val brought the Beard Award back. There's more recognition. Michelin came. People are stepping up their games. I don't know if people are strategically looking at how to win awards, but I think for the consumer, it's great news.
Absolutely.
People are pushing the envelope and doing interesting things and celebrating local product more.
Yeah.
And like I said, I hope we see some people really start to embrace the real local product, not just, grouper because it's easy to cook and you know how to eat it.
Yeah, and
but
everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff out there that we could celebrate. But I think the future of Miami's bright. The culinary future in the scene is better and better all the time. But at some point, some of these restaurants have to close, or more people got to move here, or something, right?
Rents go down.
Yeah, the rents are never going to go down.
Yeah.
They'll stabilize, and maybe the economy will catch up to it. But I like I said, I've been here 30 years, and the bubble has never burst in Miami. Never. Every time we're like, well, it's going to burst. Bubble's the real estate market, and it never does.
Wow.
So I don't know, man. Good things to see what's happening, but it's an exciting time to be in Miami. Lots of young, exciting energy, and I think people embracing this idea of celebrating its cultural diversity, right?
Thanks. And thanks for paving the road for that.
Well, I don't know about the cultural diversity part because I was a late bloomer in that regard. But, I'm happy to have contributed to some place that I've called home for so long. So
Great.
And
Perfect.
I appreciate you having me.
No, thank you for coming, taking the time. And I hope we can continue this conversation. We have some lists
we have some lists to exchange, and I'll come and see you in London.
Please do.
I definitely want to check out your London world.
Please do. Well, thank you everybody for being here with us. This is One of Each, and thanks for following, thanks for supporting, and see you next time. Bye.